Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe in that feeling of resourceful relaxation. And as you exhale, give permission to relax, to release, especially any tension that's been just there under the surface. And when you breathe in deeper than you normally would. And when you release, allow the exhale to be the release valve, to allow whatever needs to be let go to let go. That's it. And as you allow yourself to settle now, perhaps becoming aware of everything around you, the feeling of any fabric on your skin, the rhythm of your breathing. Maybe you can scan your body and find a heartbeat or a pulse. Feel and connect to the rhythm of your own body. That's it. And just begin simply by noticing your breathing, not changing it, just noticing the breath that arrives by itself, and how every outward breath knows how to leave. And so as you breathe out, perhaps you could imagine that certain muscles are receiving permission to stop working quite so hard. Allow the muscles around the eyes to relax, and the tiny muscles in the forehead, the ones responsible for surprise or concern. Allow those muscles to relax now, and the jaw can loosen, and the tongue can rest. And maybe that relaxation begins to spread down through the neck and the shoulders, as though something that has been carried for a long time can finally be put down. Relaxing through the arms, the hands, the fingers, allowing the chest and there in the abdomen to soften. And sometimes people are surprised by how much energy suddenly becomes available when the body stops using energy unnecessarily. Because there is a difference between being still and being empty. A difference between resting and having nothing left. And maybe some part of you can already become curious about that distinction as you allow the muscles of your back to soften, the hips, the thighs, the knees, even lower there in the calves, all the way down until that relaxation reaches your feet and your toes. Breathing in resourceful relaxation, and with each breath out, simply imagine drifting a little deeper into yourself and not away from life, perhaps toward something that has been waiting there. Because sometimes things don't disappear. Sometimes they become quiet. And quiet things can awaken again. I once heard a story about a woman who inherited an old house overlooking the sea. It had once been a wonderful place. Windows open and music traveling from room to room. Friends would arrive without much warning. Food appearing on tables. Bare feet on warm floors. And she remembered herself laughing there. Not polite laughter. The kind of laughter that begins somewhere lower in the body and takes over before you've even had time to decide whether you should. But over the years, life happened. Responsibilities accumulated. There were disappointments. Things that had once seemed effortless began to require effort. And eventually, she found herself keeping the windows shut. And nothing terrible had happened to the house. It simply became quieter, more functional, and she still maintained it. She cleaned it, protected it, paid the bills. Everything worked, and yet she knew that somehow merely maintaining a house wasn't the same thing as living inside it. And one afternoon, she discovered an old photograph where she was standing on a harbour wall, younger, wind blowing her hair everywhere, grinning beside a ridiculous little lobster someone had brought from a souvenir store. And it reminded her of Sebastian from that old mermaid story. That wonderfully expressive little creature, insisting that there was music beneath the surface if only someone would listen. And that photograph made her smile because she remembered something. That there had been a time when the world seemed full of invitations, not obligations, invitations. And so that evening, she decided to open just one window, just one. And immediately, the sea air moved through the room, curtains lifted. The temperature changed, and there was movement where before there had been stillness. And she stood there, wondering whether perhaps you didn't need to renovate an entire house to bring it back to life. Perhaps you simply needed to allow something back in. And the next morning, she decided to open another window. But as she reached for the catch, she noticed something strange outside in the garden. Something she hadn't seen there for years. And she went outside to investigate. And there was an old walled garden behind the house. And it had once been overflowing with flowers and herbs and fruit and colors. Things climbing over one another without anyone organizing them. But eventually, she'd stopped using it. And nature, having its own sense of timing, had carried on without her. Some things became overgrown, and others went dormant. And there were bare patches where she assumed that nothing would grow again. Yet, that morning, she noticed a tiny green shoot pushing through a crack between two stones. And as she bent closer, she saw a little lizard lying nearby, perfectly still, bathing in a patch of sunlight. But the lizard wasn't trying to become warm. It wasn't concentrating on warmth. It simply knew where the warmth was and allowed itself to receive it. And she laughed quietly at the simplicity of that. Because human beings can make extraordinary projects out of the very things that other creatures simply allow. The lizard didn't wonder whether it deserved the sunlight, didn't analyze whether yesterday's sunlight had been better, and didn't worry about whether it would look foolish enjoying itself. It simply turned towards what felt good. And perhaps there is intelligence in that, exuberance in that, older than language, a wisdom that knows when to rest and when to move, when to reach and when to retreat. And when something pleasant or pleasurable is close enough to move towards, an idea forms. Move toward pleasure, guided by exuberance, fueled by the rekindling of passion. And she began clearing the garden slowly, Not because it was broken, because she wanted to discover what was still alive underneath everything that had accumulated. And she found bulbs beneath the soil and roots that had survived winters and seeds that seemed to have been waiting precisely for the right combination of warmth and moisture and light. And she realized something then. Dormant didn't mean dead. It meant waiting for conditions to change. So she began changing the conditions. A little more sunlight, a little more water, and a little less clutter. And she planted jasmine beside the old wall because she remembered loving the smell. And she planted herbs she could touch with her fingers. She chose flowers purely because she liked the vibrancy of their colors. No practical reasons at all. And as the weeks passed, something curious happened. She found herself visiting the garden more often, lingering there, not because she was supposed to, because she wanted to, and wanting something, well, it seemed strangely important, because wanting is a kind of movement, a leaning towards, a quiet inner yes, sometimes subtle at first, a curiosity, a temptation, an impulse, a feeling of perhaps a little closer. And once those responses are allowed rather than examined too quickly, they can become stronger, more energized, more exuberant in their own natural way. And one evening, she sat against the warm garden, by the wall near the jasmine, and closed her eyes. And that jasmine nearby was beginning to flower. And somewhere nearby, the little lizard moved through the stones. And she noticed that the warmth of the day remained inside the wall long after the sun itself had disappeared. Heat stored inside stone. Life stored inside roots. And possibility stored inside things that had seemed inactive. And she wondered, what else could remain inside something for much longer than anyone realized? At that exact moment, she heard bells beyond the garden wall. Small bells getting closer. And when she opened the gate, a shepherd was bringing a small herd of goats down from the hills. And anyone who has spent time around goats knows there is something gloriously irreverent about them. They do not seem particularly interested in dignity. They climb things they shouldn't climb, and they reach for things they're apparently not supposed to have. They explore and they nudge, and they leap and they investigate. They play, and they are curious creatures. And one young goat had escaped the herd completely and was just standing on top of the woman's garden table, as though this had always been its intended destination. And so the woman burst out laughing. And once again, it wasn't controlled laughter. It came out before she could stop it. And the shepherd apologized, and she told him not to, because for the first time in a long time, there was chaos in the garden, and she liked it. The goat jumped down and darted towards the jasmine. She chased it. It ran. She ran. The shepherd ran. And for several ridiculous minutes, a grown woman and a shepherd were chasing a goat around a garden, while the goat appeared to be having the finest afternoon of its life. Until, eventually, all three of them stopped. The goat, because it had found something more interesting. The shepherd, because he was exhausted. And the woman, because she was laughing too hard to continue. She could feel her heart beating, feel warmth in her face, feel her breathing deeper and faster. And it suddenly occurred to her, this is what being alive feels like. Not thinking about being alive, feeling it. Energy moving through a body, blood moving, breath moving, curiosity moving. A body capable of responding before the mind has assembled an explanation. And perhaps there are many forms of appetite. An appetite for food, an appetite for adventure, for music, for touch, for conversation, for closeness, for novelty, beauty, for play, for life itself. And isn't it curious? When one appetite begins to awaken, other appetites sometimes remember the way, because they were never entirely separate. They belong to the same living system, the same body that laughs can shiver, the same skin that notices sunlight, can notice softness, the same mind that anticipates an adventure can start to begin anticipating other enjoyable possibilities. And isn't it strange how anticipation itself can be delicious? That sometimes the space before something happens contains its own kind of pleasure. The unopened gift, the first notes of music, standing at the top of a hill before running down, a hand hovering just before touching warm water, a door not yet opened, a quest not yet embarked. And yet, the wonderful thing about anticipation is that nobody needs to command it. You simply create conditions where something might happen, and some deeper part begins wondering, what comes next? And so the woman looked back toward the house, and one of the curtains was moving through the open window. The evening air had become warm, and she realized she wanted to go inside. And not because she was tired, because something was waiting there. Something she had completely forgotten about. So, she said goodbye to the shepherd. And watched the goats disappear down the lane, and walked back through the garden, past the jasmine and the warm stone wall, past a place where the lizard had bathed in the sun. And when she reached the house, she remembered exactly what she had been looking for. So she walked into the sitting room and found an old record player. And beside it was a stack of music she hadn't listened to in years. And she chose one without thinking too much about it, putting the needle down, and there was a crackle and a pause, and then music. She stood still for a moment, then one foot moved slightly, then the other. Nothing dramatic. She wasn't performing, and there was nobody watching, which made it easier. Her shoulders moved. Her hips remembered something. Her body began finding the rhythm before her conscious mind decided what the rhythm should be. And perhaps that is the most useful thing to remember. There are experiences your body already knows, and you don't always have to learn them again. Sometimes you simply stop preventing them. And she danced alone in that room. Not because she was trying to become her younger self. There was no desire to go backwards. She wanted something better. To bring everything she'd learned into a body that could still play, still respond, still want, still become intrigued. Still feel those subtle inner movements that say, yes, that, more of that. I'd forgotten how good that feels. And she realized that one thing didn't mean everything. And started to feel that inner exuberance was awakening. And maybe it had a location. She could feel sensations awakening. And she called that exuberance. And as the music continued, isn't it curious? She left the windows open. And over the following months, the garden became extraordinary. Not because she forced it. She had stopped forcing things. She simply created better conditions. Water where water was needed. And light where light could reach. And space where things had become overcrowded. And patience where something needed time. And the jasmine covered the wall, and the flowers returned. And the lizards returned too. Finding those warm stones again and again. And whenever she saw one basking there in the sun, she remembered. Turn towards warmth. Notice what feels good. Allow yourself to linger. Let pleasure be information. And let curiosity guide attention. And she began following those principles elsewhere. Choosing fabrics because she enjoyed the sensation. Reconnecting with that feeling of being sensual. Sensations connected to a sensuality that was awakening to a new level. And senses became more noticeable, where even eating food slowly enough to taste it felt magical on the tongue, and listening to music because of what it did inside her, rather than because she thought she ought to. Standing under warm water a little longer, enjoying scents and textures, eye contact, laughter, small moments of anticipation, allowing herself to enjoy being noticed, and sometimes noticing somebody else. No pressure and no obligation. No performance, simply the freedom to embrace that sensual exuberance, to discover what naturally created a spark. Because desire grows differently when it's invited rather than demanded. And what if each small spark seems to tell the next spark that it's safe to wake up, until eventually she stopped checking whether the garden had returned. She was simply enjoying it. And one morning she found herself standing at that second window again, the one she had intended to open before discovering that little green shoot in the garden. And she smiled because she had completely forgotten she had left the job unfinished. So she opened it, and then another, and another, until every window in the house was open, and sea air flowed from one end to the other, and the curtains moved, and doors shifted slightly in the breeze, and light reached corners that had been dim for years. And from somewhere near the harbour came the distant sound of music. And she looked at that ridiculous old photograph again. The younger woman, the wind-blown hair, the souvenir lobster. And she realized something important. That younger woman hadn't disappeared. Nor did she need to become her again. The exuberance had simply changed shape. It was deeper now, more discerning, more interesting, because she knew more about herself. She had survived more winters, and that meant she could appreciate warmth differently. There are parts of life we enjoy because they're new, and other parts we enjoy far more once we understand their value. And so she placed the photograph there on the windowsill, and somewhere in her imagination, that little lobster seemed almost to say, there is still music under the surface. And perhaps there always was, because life has rhythms. Tides come in and tides go out. Seasons change and gardens rest. Bodies rest. And then something wonderful shifts. A little warmth, a little curiosity, a sense that feels sensual, an unexpected thought, a glance, a laugh, a memory, a possibility, and something begins moving again. Perhaps you don't even need to know where this renewed energy begins. You only allow yourself to recognize it when it appears. A little more enthusiasm, a desire to go somewhere, to wear something, to create something, to talk to somebody, to move your body, to explore, to laugh, to touch life more completely, and perhaps enjoy those moments when life seems to touch you back. And you can trust yourself to notice what feels right, to move towards what genuinely appeals, to allow closeness when closeness feels good, to rediscover anticipation without needing to label it. Because some things become more powerful when they're experienced before they're explained. And your unconscious mind can continue remembering. Dormant is not dead, and rest is not absence. And passion does not need to be manufactured. It needs oxygen and warmth and permission, and something worth moving towards. And maybe perhaps over the coming days, and maybe weeks or months, you may notice small changes first. An urge to laugh or to move, to dress differently or listen to music, to be more playful, to notice and connect with beauty, to feel warmth, to notice the interesting feeling of wanting. And each time you follow one genuine impulse towards life, you remind every other part of yourself how movement works. One spark recognizing another, one appetite awakening another, until exuberance becomes less like something you're trying to recover and more like something that has started to recover you. And very soon, we will return all the way back from this journey, a journey within your imagination, a journey of thoughts within thoughts, ideas within ideas, and dreams within dreams. But don't be surprised if you return with more lust for life, a rekindled exuberance, and a passion to explore quests and adventures and wonderful possibilities. So take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes as you connect and calibrate into the here and the now. As I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.